Hello, it's Alex, the Bookubus. Today I'm going to be talking about films rather than books, and I'm going to talk about some of the films I've already watched for the spooky season. I had shared a video, I think last month, talking about the 31 films I was hoping to watch during September and October in the run-up to Halloween. And yeah, the list of 31 ended up growing a bit and I think is closer to 40 now. So hopefully I will get to them all in the time frame. And I figured since there are so many films, I would split the wrap up into 2 videos. So I'm going to be talking about 19 films in this one, and then I'll talk about the rest of the films in a future video. And I haven't ranked the films individually, but I'm going to go through them from low star rating to higher star rating. And to kick it off with the lowest rating, I did give one of these films 1 star. It's definitely my least favourite of all of the films I've watched in the past like 6 weeks. It was Malignant from 2021, and I know lots of people loved this one. I went into it thinking I was going to enjoy it too, but I just didn't. It just wasn't for me, I guess. You know, they can't all be winners. It's fine. But yeah, I think the thing with this, it is really just a mishmash of things that have been done before, so I didn't find it too interesting anyway, but you know, it was still entertaining enough. It was shaping up to be like a 3-star film at best, which is fine. But then, without giving any specific spoilers, there are a couple of things that happen later on that I just found quite problematic and unnecessary, and they just didn't sit right with me, so it tainted my overall view of the film. I ended up rating it 1 star. I think also it just seemed very uneven tone-wise. It felt like not everyone got the same memo. Like, it seemed like some of the cast were aiming for one tone and then some of the cast were aiming for a different tone. Not sure, you know, what was going on there, but I don't think it worked. And yeah, I think just the whole taking ideas from some older films and some maybe more B-movie type schlocky films, but putting them into this big budget film, I personally didn't think it worked in this instance, at least. So yeah, it just wasn't for me. You know, I'm glad other people enjoyed it. You know, that's why we watch films, is because we want to enjoy them, we want to have a good time. There's probably a lot more I could say about the film, but I've got so many other ones to talk about, so I'll leave it at that. But yeah, it's not that I didn't get it before someone comes out and tells me so. I got it, I just didn't like what I got. Okay, moving on. The rest of the films are a 3-star or higher, so I did at least enjoy them in some way. And let's see, first up is Jaco from 1995. And I went into this one with very low expectations. It's a very low budget indie film, and it's about a small town that has a kind of Halloween related curse on it, and as Halloween preparations are underway for this particular year, yeah, things are set in motion, and there's a killer on the loose related to this old curse. But I did enjoy this one more than I thought I was going to. Yeah, it's super low budget, but you know, it was still quite entertaining, I found. And I just really like the fact that, you know, a group of people can come together and make a film. I mean, I think people take it for granted what goes into filmmaking, and you know, people take for granted the big budget films, and you know, they then expect the same thing from a low budget film. And I mean, it's so much work to make a film. Like, I just really commend anyone that can do that, quite honestly. So yeah, I think that aspect definitely added to the charm for me of this one. And yeah, it's a fun Halloween film, so if that interests you at all, then you know this is a good time of year to check it out. Next up is The Shuttered Room from 1967. This is about a woman and her husband who move back to her childhood home, which has been abandoned for a long time. And yeah, there are some dark things from the past that come into play once they move back into the house, and all of the locals are a bit not happy with them being here, and yeah, try to make their lives a bit miserable. Yeah, I thought this one was pretty good. The story itself is a bit slow and a bit meandering, and yeah, it kind of takes a while for things to get going, but it does have its moments, and it did go in a direction that I wasn't expecting, so I did like that. And it has Oliver Reed in it, and he's always a good time. Next is The Pond from 2021. This is about, I think, a professor. I think he is an anthropologist from what I remember. This was one I saw kind of early on in September, so it's been a while, forgive me. But I think he has recently lost his job, and he is still working on his research, and he's like on the brink of some kind of apocalyptic discovery. And yeah, this was an interesting concept, but I'm not sure it like fully worked. I think unfortunately the acting wasn't, you know, kind of very consistent. I think some of the actors here were great, and then some not quite as much, unfortunately. And also the story, I will admit, not sure I could fully explain it to you. I think some of it definitely went over my head, and I'm not sure I really understood it. It does have some really interesting visuals though, so if you like that kind of thing, it might be worth checking out for that alone. So yeah, this one was a bit more of a mixed bag for me. I'm still glad I watched it, but yeah, not necessarily a new favourite. Next is Urban Legends Bloody Mary from 2005. I purely picked this up because I found it on DVD for $1 at a library book sale a couple of months ago, and I was like, yeah, I'm totally watching that. And this is, yeah, follows the same kind of urban legends formula, and we're following some high school students, and some urban legends kills happen within their friend group. And this one is kind of attached to a Bloody Mary story that supposedly happened at their school some decades earlier. This was another one that I expected nothing from it, so I probably ended up enjoying it more than I had thought I would. Again, it's pretty low budget. It does have some terrible CGI effects, admittedly, but it was still just a fun, silly, entertaining time. You know, it was a 3-star movie. It's, yeah, not going to win any awards necessarily, but I still thought it was somewhat entertaining. Last up for the 3-star films was Seance from 2021. This just recently came out on Shudder, and this is about a boarding school for girls. One of the girls dies, and her friends decide to hold a seance to see if they can contact her. And there's a new student that joins the school who also becomes involved in it. And yeah, there's some creepy goings on, and yeah, she's trying to figure out what's happening. Yeah, this one was also pretty good. I thought the cast was good. I really did like the setting and the atmosphere of the story. It did have a couple of, you know, creepy-ish moments, nothing too wildly scary or anything. And I thought the story was interesting enough to hold my attention. I liked the vibe of it, you know, there's something about a boarding school for girls that is just interesting to me, I guess. I think it did lose me a bit towards the end without going into any specifics, but you know, it was still one that I enjoyed while I was watching it, but yeah, might not necessarily remember too far in the future. Okay, moving on to the 3.5-star films. We have Dracula's Daughter from 1936. This one follows on from the events of the Universal Dracula film starring Bela Lugosi, which I thought was a really interesting idea, and yeah, it kind of goes off in another direction following Dracula's Daughter. And the actress that played that character, Gloria Holden, was just absolutely wonderful. Like, she really made the film for me. She just has such presence and she's so striking. And yeah, just the atmosphere, the mood, the tone, I thought was all great. It had some really awesome visuals and interesting things like that going on, the way that it was shot. I did think the story was where it kind of got a little let down for me in my overall enjoyment of it, just because I feel like a lot of films from that era have like a side story that just isn't quite as interesting, and yeah, that was the case here, so that let it down a bit. But if you like that era of horror films and you have not seen this one, I would definitely recommend it. Yeah, this is one that I would, even though I didn't rate it like super high, you know, it's one that some of the visuals have definitely stuck with me, and I wouldn't, you know, be averse to revisiting it in future. Next is The Purge from 2013, and this is a horror film starring Ethan Hawke, two of my favourite things, so I've no idea why I hadn't watched this any sooner, but there we go, it just happens sometimes. And this is about a kind of dystopian future where one night every year there is the Purge, which allows anyone to go out and commit crimes just for this one night, and there will be no, you know, legal repercussions. And we're following a pretty well-off family who live in a big house, and they have a high-tech security system in place, but they end up letting someone in to their home who is being pursued by some people taking part in the Purge, and yeah, the story kind of goes from there. So it's a, you know, somewhat home invasion type of story, but a bit different. And yeah, this one I thought was also pretty good. It definitely had some good tension throughout the film, and yeah, some good kind of action scenes. Yeah, I thought it was pretty effective, an interesting idea. I don't think I'm necessarily rushing out to watch the rest of the franchise, but you know, it was an interesting concept, and I enjoyed it while I was watching it, so yeah. Next is Whispering Corridors from 1998. This is set in a school for girls, and there is a death at the beginning of the film. We're following a teacher and some of the student characters as, yeah, different things unfold. And yeah, don't want to say too much more about this one to give any kind of specifics, but I really liked the tone and the atmosphere of this one. It's quite a slow-paced story, but yeah, it definitely has just a really good feel to it, and it also has a really good, yeah, just late 90s look to it as well, which I actually really liked. I think if you like the original Ring movie, it kind of has a similar vibe in some ways to this one. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, I would recommend it. This is part of a series actually, but I think they're more thematic rather than you having to watch them in an order, because I had already seen the second one called Wishing Stairs, which I also really enjoyed, and yeah, thought I'd go back and watch the first one. So yeah, as far as I can understand, they're not related story-wise, but they just kind of share a supernatural angle, and the second one is also school-based, so I haven't watched the rest in the series yet, so I'm not sure if they're all supernatural school-based or just supernatural in general. Anyway, I'm rambling a bit now, but I enjoyed it. It had some good creepy moments, and yeah, I just liked the style. Next up is The Midnight Hour from 1985. This, I believe, was originally made for TV, so it is a bit of a lower budget affair, but it's a fun one, and this one is Halloween related, so now is the perfect time of year to give it a watch if you're interested. This is about a group of teenage friends who are holding a Halloween party, and there's an incantation that's read aloud in the cemetery, and you know, we all know that no good can come of that. And so all of the dead come back to life and wreak havoc. This one is definitely for the 80s fans like myself. Yeah, very strong 80s vibe with it having been made in 1985. But yeah, some good fashions, and yeah, it's just it's a fun one. It also has like a random song and dance routine in the middle, so you know, that's always good. And last up for the 3.5 stars is Idle Hands from 1999. This is one of those films that I've been aware of for years, but I guess I didn't watch it when it first came out, and I just haven't, I guess, made the effort to watch it until now. And yeah, this was another fun one, and it's also set around Halloween, so yeah, good time of year to give it a watch. And this one is about a teenage boy whose hand becomes possessed and starts killing people, but yeah, all he really wants to do is get stoned with his friends and fantasize about this girl that he fancies. And yeah, it's all culminating at the school's Halloween party, at which the band The Offspring are playing. So yeah, it's very 90s. Yeah, this was just kind of a, you know, dumb, silly horror comedy. But yeah, it was pretty entertaining. I might have enjoyed it more had I seen it back in the day, but yeah, nevertheless, I still thought it was a good time. Okay, moving on to the 4-star films, and yeah, that's as high as it goes. I didn't have any films that like super blew me away, but there were definitely some really great ones. So yeah, can't complain at that. And first up, I'll actually mention a TV show that I watched. It is Slasher, Flesh and Blood. This I watched on Shudder, and Slasher is a series that I know they've had a few seasons out already, and I remember trying to watch season 1 some years ago. I think I only watched the first episode and it just didn't really grab me, so I never actually continued with it. But the main reason that I jumped on Flesh and Blood was because it has David Cronenberg in it, and I love him, so I had to give it a watch. And this is a series about a family that come together. The patriarch, David Cronenberg, is dying and has basically set up this kind of game for the others to take part in, and whoever wins will get his entire fortune. So it kind of had a vibe of recent films like Knives Out and Ready or Not, where you've got this like wealthy, dysfunctional family dynamic going on, but also, yeah, some shenanigans in the storyline. And also reminded me of, there was a show some years ago called Harper's Island, which was, from what I remember, because it's been a while, but it was some kind of reunion or get together on an island, and there's a killer picking everyone off. Yeah, which I remember being, you know, pretty decent. So it was kind of like a mixture of those, which, you know, I thought worked pretty well. And yeah, I just found this one to be really entertaining. You know, it might be nothing particularly new, but it was just, I thought, well done. It had some really gory kills, like they did not hold back on the practical effects. I thought they were actually really well done, so that was cool. And yeah, David Cronenberg is he's just always awesome. He plays yeah, a not super nice character in this one. But yeah, I just thought everyone involved seemed to, you know, throw themselves into their role and into the story. And yeah, basically people are getting picked off, and so we're waiting to find out who the killer is, and, you know, also if any of the characters are actually going to win and survive and get the fortune. So yeah, I just thought this was really entertaining, and yeah, gave it 4 stars. Next up, something completely different, is Kikis Delivery Service from 1989. This one isn't horror, but it is witchy, so, you know, I thought it would fit for the season. And yeah, this is another film that I've been meaning to watch for years, but just haven't for whatever reason, but I'm very glad I finally did, because I really enjoyed it. This is about a young teenage witch who heads off on her own for a year as part of her kind of like finding herself and becoming a real witch, and she ends up starting a delivery service. She can fly around on her broom with her cat and yeah, deliver things to people in the town. And yeah, this one was just, it was very wholesome and sweet and charming. You know, I laughed, I cried. It was, yeah, it was just a really good time, and yeah, very much enjoyed it. Back to something completely different is Black Sabbath from 1963. This is an anthology of 3 different stories within one film, and yeah, I thought they were all good, but I have to say my favourite was the 3rd one, which was super creepy and wonderful. Yeah, hard to say too much about this one with it being an anthology, but yeah, if you're a fan of horror anthologies and haven't seen this one, I definitely recommend it. It has Boris Karloff in it and he's always wonderful. So yeah, and it's directed by Mario Bava, so we have this, yeah, fantastic Italian horror style, which I love. And yeah, this one was just a really good time. Next is the Dunwich Horror from 1970. This is based on a Lovecraft story and is about a character who is trying to track down the Necronomicon so he can, yeah, fulfill the things he wants to do. And yeah, I really, really liked this one. The 70s style is strong and it stars Dean Stockwell as the main character. He does this absolutely fantastic job of playing this character who is, you know, he's odd. He's a bit of an oddball. He's a bit of a strange cat, but he's also got this like charisma and charm about him as well. So yeah, I thought he absolutely nailed that and was just brilliant. And yeah, without giving any specific spoilers, it definitely goes into some awesome 70s effects later in the film, which I just thought were brilliant. So yeah, this one was a really good time. It's another one I've been meaning to see for years. Yeah, so glad I finally checked it out. Next is A Quiet Place in the Country from 1968. This is about an artist who is having a bit of a block with his work. So he ends up moving into this abandoned villa in the countryside to focus on his art and see if he can come up with some good work. And while he's there, he finds out a story about a girl who lived in the area many years ago and the story surrounding her and her death. And so instead of focusing on his art, he ends up becoming obsessed with this story. And yeah, this one was really interesting. I will admit, I wasn't sure I was into it for a portion of the film because it is somewhat disjointed in like the style of it and the story, and like some of it I was just like, I don't even know what's happening anymore. But I was like, I'll stick with it. And yeah, it definitely, once it kind of like, I don't know, hits a certain point, it's just from then on out, it was like, yeah, I was glued to the screen. I would describe this as maybe more art house slash psychological horror, maybe. It's kind of hard to, yeah, put this one in a box, I guess. But I do know I really liked it. It has some, yeah, really great style. It's another Italian one. It just has that wonderful, inimitable style. It is a bit wacky in places because of the kind of art side of the story. So yeah, there's some kind of interesting stylistic choices within the filmmaking. But yeah, I think as a whole it worked, but it is a bit all over the place in that respect. This one also stars Vanessa Redgrave, who is just an absolute badass. Like, I think, you know, I don't think I've actually seen that many films of hers, but like between this and The Devils, I mean, she just comes across as like such a fearless actress. You know, she just really throws herself into her roles. And yeah, this is a great example of that. She was wonderful. Yeah, I don't want to say too much more about this one, but if any of that has piqued your interest, then I would, yeah, definitely recommend tracking it down and checking it out. Okay, we have 3 more films to talk about. Next up is Society from 1989. This was a rewatch for me and is about a teenage boy who starts to suspect there's something weird going on with his family. And yeah, he's not wrong. Yeah, this one is like a classic body horror, like full-on 80s practical effects. It's gooey, it's gross, it's brilliant. Don't know if I need to say too much more about this one, but yeah, it's definitely an 80s gem that if you have not seen, then I definitely recommend it. It has been years since I'd seen this one, so I was really looking forward to revisiting it, and it did not disappoint, so yeah. Next is Stoker from 2013. This is about a teenage girl whose father dies, and at the funeral her uncle turns up, this uncle that she didn't know she had, and he ends up moving in with her and her mother. And yeah, she kind of has this like, you know, attraction and repulsion to him. You know, she's intrigued by him, but she also hates him at the same time. And yeah, this one had just a really wonderful atmosphere and style to the film that I really, really liked. It stars Mia Wasikowska, who is, yeah, probably one of my favourite actresses. I think she's fantastic, and yeah, definitely no exception in this film. So yeah, so part of this is, yeah, kind of finding out and like pinpointing the mystery surrounding the uncle, and also it's something of a coming of age story as well, following this teenage character. Yeah, I just thought this one was great. It's one, again, I'd been meaning to see for ages, so I'm really glad I finally did, because it did not disappoint. And last but not least was Candyman from 2021. I had been very much anticipating this one. I remember when it first, I heard talks about there being, I think they were talking about it being a remake initially, and I was like, no, how dare you? The original is like one of my all-time favourites, so yeah, definitely a bit too precious over it. But as time went on and more information came out, and yeah, knowing that it was a sequel rather than a remake, I definitely changed my mind at some point and genuinely became really interested in seeing it. And then of course it got, the release got postponed for quite some time. So, you know, anyway, when it finally came out, I was, yeah, very glad to see it. And I thought it was excellent. This one does seem to have had mixed reviews, but I thought it was great. I think it worked really well as a sequel. I really liked the direction it took the original story, the way that it referenced it, but also, you know, kind of took it in a new direction. I think the social commentary and that kind of thing worked really, really well with it. And it also had just some really good creepy moments. So like, yeah, what's not to love? Yeah, I just thought this one had a lot of elements that I really liked and that worked really well together. You know, I liked the, you know, I thought it looked really good, it had a really good cast, it had a really good score. There was just, yeah, so many elements that I think worked together to make what I found to be an excellent film and an excellent sequel to the original. So yeah, definitely one of my favourites so far of the spooky season. So yeah, so that wraps up part 1 of the wrap up of films. Yeah, I'm filming this, it's like middle of October, and yeah, if you had seen my previous video, which was my September reading wrap up, you will know that I haven't been feeling too well lately, but I'm finally, like, just literally just the past couple of days, I've like finally started to feel like I'm back to normal. So I had some kind of stomach bug, which was gross, and yeah, I took a week off work, which is very unlike me. I don't even remember the last time I had to do anything like that. Yeah, it was just that bad. and the following week I was, you know, a bit better but not well. And then the week after that, you know, I kind of finally started to feel like I was getting over it, but still had like some recovery time. So yeah, it's been kind of a bit of a rough couple of weeks, but you know, fingers crossed, touch wood, hopefully I'm over it. Also, I did have a COVID test which came back negative, thankfully, so that's good news. But yeah, the main thing is I think I'm doing okay, and you know, thank you all ever so much for your well wishes in my previous video. Yeah, it was just so nice to yeah, have all of your get well soons. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, I think I'm finally somewhat back to normal anyway. And yeah, hopefully I can make up for lost time. I can finally, in the last couple of weeks of October, you know, dive into the Halloween goodies and the pumpkin beers and all of that good stuff, and I can't wait. So this might have been a bit of a long rambly one. I hope it was somewhat enjoyable and or interesting. Do let me know if you have seen any of these. I would love to hear your thoughts, whether you liked or disliked them. So yeah, do let me know if you've seen any of them or if you're planning on watching them. If you've been watching any good films recently, let me know your recommendations. And yeah, I will hopefully be bringing you part 2 of the film wrap up. I guess it will be in hopefully early November, and I'm yeah, looking forward to knocking out the rest of the films on my list. I've got plenty more exciting ones to watch and talk about. So yeah, hope you are all having a wonderful October so far, and we're getting closer to the big day itself. So yeah, hope you all have a wonderful rest of the month, and yeah, thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video.